Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. E.
And I'm Bolton Mortimer the Authenticator, and we're the Duality of Man. So Hassan said something stupid, and it got me thinking. Um, I'm pretty sure everyone knows by now the famous the famous real jobs won't deplete your social battery like streaming will, quote of Hassan's. Um,
Did you ever
and
work in customer service?
Yeah, and that of course got me thinking about the whole concept of a real job. But then I started to think further about how often that phrase, that descriptive use of the word real is inherently shies, particularly as it relates to the concept of quote unquote real men TM. And that just got me thinking about how often realism is just softcore nihilism, masquerading as objectivity, and it spawned a thing. So now here we are.
Yeah. So, I don't think Hassan has ever had a, you know, actual laborious job in his entire life. Like, wasn't he some trust fund brat, and then he worked for his uncle Chank at the Young Turks, and then he became a streamer. So he's never had to put in like actual physical, breaking
Yeah,
back
and isn't
labor.
isn't his father like uh head of one of the Middle East's largest companies or some shit?
I don't know much about
To the
his
best of my
father.
recollection, that was a thing. But yeah, he alludes to having to have a retail sales job at one point, in the clip that got him utterly shanghaied. Um, because working one sales job makes you an authority on being able to compare all lines of work ever to streaming. And let's get Hassan out of the way really rather quickly, because I did want to get more into the rabbit hole that this whole thing sent me down. We'll get Hassan out
Yeah,
of the way
but
rather quickly.
just for those who are unaware, real short, Hassan Piker is a streamer on Twitch and is also one of the biggest pieces of human garbage on the internet.
Not quite as big as Vosh, but he's up there. He's also one of the bread tube adjacent motherfuckers. And for some reason, academia thinks that he is the like modern face of youthful streaming or internet culture or internet political commentary or some shit. But that's
Only if
neither
you're
here nor
brain
there.
dead.
Hassan, um, Hassan said that quote a a real job will not deplete your social battery in the same way that streaming will. To which literally everyone on the internet, on every side of every issue, went, bitch, please, streaming or YouTubing or being a content creator are is the definition of most people's dream jobs. The jobs that they would beg, borrow, and steal in order to do if they could. And yet you, Hassan, are such a privileged, effete son of a bitch that you cannot hack the not only one of the easiest jobs in human history, but the job that most people doing those of aforementioned real jobs, TM, they would gladly be doing instead of those real jobs, TM. So you, sir, are basically a lottery winner who is complaining about how expensive everything is. And on some kind of paper, you're right, because real jobs are quite taxing. But do you see how when a lottery winner complains about how expensive everything is, it doesn't ring quite as based as when a working class lad sings about it, say in the song "Rich Men North of Richmond," etc. Um, that's door number one of the stupidity of Hassan. Door number two, of course, is what led me down the rabbit hole that I got led down this week, which is fuck the very concept of a quote unquote real job, because I've noticed this. This was the end result of my rabbit hole this week. Um, when people say real in that descriptive way they use it, they mean suffering, apparently. That is usually what people mean when they use the word real, be it real job, real man, real problems, etc. They mean suffering when they use the word real like that, it seems. Under and or lack of beauty, because when the phrase real women come up, it's usually as a result of the body positivity movement saying that female beauty standards are implausible or some shit. When people say real, they mean a combination of normative grounding, softcore nihilism, and the lowest common denominator. That's usually what the descriptive term real means. Um, I don't know if you watched any of the clips that I sent you yesterday, um, relating to the whole real man concept, but that
Yes,
seems
and
to be the default definition people have for not even just real in the descriptive sense, like real job or real man, but also to some extent, at least, in the concept of realism, because most things that get praised for quote unquote realism are, as I say, a combination of being quote unquote grounded and being softcore nihilistic. Everything that is quote unquote real is miserable, monotonous, and soul draining. That's why most quote unquote realistic movies or shows or things are all about a miserable, depressed 20 something in a gray concrete city, usually working either a manual labor job or a cubicle job. Because
well, here's it.
apparently
I think
reality doesn't contain any awe-inspiring or wondrous or marvelous or even just colorful things. This is
here's it.
this is news to me, because you see, I have had 28 years of living in this reality we call home, and quite a lot of things in a reality do have scale, are inspiring, colorful, and or marvelous. But maybe I'm the asshole. Who knows?
So one of the things I think that qualifies, um, a real job is the fact that a lot of people don't do their jobs because necessarily they are enjoy them or they're their passion. They do them because, well, you have to do, or you need a job to get by. So they'll do the job and endure like the quote unquote suffering that they have to endure by, like, spending the time of their life doing something they don't really want to, so they could get the resources that they need to then live the rest of the life the way they want to, and
But
even
but
not necessarily they want to because they may not necessarily have enough money to live the way they want to.
But see, the natural end result and usual implication of that is, if you're enjoying the job that you're doing, it's not real somehow. If you make money doing the thing you like to do, then it's not quote unquote real somehow. In the same way as when that, real modifier gets applied to men, you're not a real man unless you can suffer endlessly without complaint. Basically, you're not a real man unless you're the caveman archetype who can beat the bear over its head and bring it home to feed the cave and so on. And I don't, maybe again, maybe I'm the asshole, but to me there's something inherently fucked up and softcore nihilistic about that. The idea that you have to be suffering in order to be engaging with reality on a meaningful level, as though again there's nothing um inspirational or awe-inspiring contained in reality, as though every day from cradle to grave needs to be depressed 20 something living in a rainy miserable concrete city, usually working either a manual labor job or a cubicle job. And
Well, here's
again,
here's the
I don't I don't agree with that. It strikes me as
It may
bullshit.
not. It may not be. Like you. It's not necessarily. I don't know. I guess you may not necessarily have a passion for it, but it could be the thing of, okay, this is what I want to do, but because I am at the bottom of the industry that I want to be in, like it's the shit years where I'm on the way to doing to getting where I want to go, but like when you're starting from the bottom, everybody has to eat shit for a few years.
Well, I mean, sure, on some level in practical terms, but a lot of people use this in almost a moral term. They'll shame you if your job isn't quote unquote real, or you're not, or you don't fit whatever their definition is of real man on an almost moral level. Um,
Well, I
and
think that one of the reasons that is because I feel like whenever you are struggling, there are certain lessons that are learned for like one is the value of money. Like we see time and time again that whenever somebody usually gets money, very quickly, that they usually will spend it very quickly and also end up broke. Like I feel like when you have to work very hard for your money, even if it's not a lot, you learn the actual value of that, and also not to be frivolous because you will actually see, and we've talked about this before. Like there are a lot of girls who walk around and say like, "I don't want a guy who makes less than six figures a year because you can't live a good life with less than that." And I'm like, "Yes, you absolutely freaking can." Like that is ridiculous that you think that.
and or like, I don't want a guy less than 6 feet tall because then he's not an effective protector, blah. Um, and so on. Which again, I wanted to touch on this whole, a lot of baggage gets applied to the concept of realism that in most cases winds up just being softcore nihilism, and I find that immensely demoralizing. Not to mention factually inaccurate. It's a strong. My problem with the concept of realism in the softcore nihilistic ways it's so often employed is not only is it demoralizing and bullshit, but it's also factually inaccurate, and it kind of strawmans the very notion of reality. Um, it also makes any attempts to improve anything somehow an immoral action, because you can't apparently desire to improve anything without being pie in the sky or fanciful, according to a lot of people who use realism and or real in descriptive terms in that way, um, in the softcore
I feel like
nihilistic way.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's like what a lot of people talk about. What a lot of people who use the quote unquote real jobs. I feel like whenever they get down on someone who seeks to like attain something really great, I think it's because they are talking about the end goal and then not talking necessarily about the thousand steps you have to take in order to get there.
I
So I
mean,
feel like here's the thing.
go
I
ahead.
feel like if somebody has like a goal they want to attain, but then are knowledgeable and reasonable about the steps that they have to take to get there, and they actually have know the path that they have to take and are and acknowledge like all the hard work that it's going to take. I don't think then people would have a problem with them because the person is in touch with the reality of what it actually is that they are trying to achieve.
But the problem with that supposition is we do see people poo-pooing the end results. We do see people like Gavin McGinnis, for example, saying you shouldn't be playing video games or reading comic books as an adult man or even as a teenage man. You should be building tables and putting your nose to the grindstone. And again, the issue I have is not only with the application of real job, but also the notion of, as I always put it, real man TM, where real is basically synonymous with suffering, and if you're not either willing or able, or even in a situation where you have to suffer all the time, you will be looked down on for that and usually have your man card revoked. Not to mention, as I say, the problem I see with the notion of realism as it is very often employed in like as an artistic descriptor or as a goal of a lot of people's artistic endeavors. Realism very often just means anything colorful, great, awe-inspiring or inspiring is too fanciful to exist in reality, even though, as again, we live in reality and there is shit in here that is inspiring or awe-inspiring. So like it always strikes me as this sneaky way of like uh dripping nihilism into most people's conception of reality, and I don't support it, especially because it has so many negative impacts when, for example, um a man fails to fit the real man stereotype and then all of a sudden he is treated like a freaking social leper. The term incel usually comes up as soon as the man card gets revoked. And
But I feel like in returns to how the real man stereotype is used in modern day, I feel like what people define as a quote unquote real man today is is literally unrealistic at this point because the standards have become so high that like me, the men would literally have to break their backs for years and years just to reach a status where they can be called a quote unquote real man. So I think a lot of guys are actually looking to walk away. I think MGTOW has become a much bigger thing.
did you see the Dadvocate clip I sent?
No, I didn't because I was at work and
Ah, in that clip, um, she's the Dadvocate, the person who owns the channel, is reacting to these two women on a podcast, going, um, men need, and I'm gonna do my best to quote, men need to toughen up. Men need to become real men. Maybe we should just force all men when they turn 18 to become homeless for a few years in a country that they don't speak the language of, and only the men who figure it out will be worthy, because we don't conscript men militarily anymore, and therefore they're all weak bitches. I paraphrased slightly, but not by much. Uh, I saw that clip, and to her credit, the Dadvocate herself rips this argument a whole new one. But that's neither here nor there. I saw that clip and I was like, this is full on. If you are not suffering, you are too weak to be considered a real man. And that was when it clicked in my head. So many of the softcore nihilistic axioms we append to realism are all about life has to be miserable, life has to be unbeautiful, life has to be defined by the endurance of and resistance to suffering. Un- and if it doesn't, then it's not reality. Even though, again, as I say, it's kind of a straw man of reality, because our world does contain plenty of shit that is both inspiring and awe-inspiring, or at least colorful. And I don't understand why um, the artistic, like, intelligentsia itself, or just intelligentsia itself, is so keen on treating realism as though it is nigh indistinguishable from nihilism, like a good 80% of the time. Especially when it trickles down into concepts like my real job or my real man, where if your job is not making you miserable, you're not doing it right, and or if you're not able to endure cartoonish levels of suffering, you're not a real man. And I feel like we could assuage this problem by simply rejecting the framing entirely, because reality is not bleak stone cuboids, cubicle jobs, and or manual labor until you die, and to be a real man, as far as I'm concerned, you simply have to be a man, like a biologically male human person. Um, and as far as I'm concerned, if you are making enough money to support yourself at a job, it is a real job. There are no other contextual appropriations on top of that. Now, mind you, there will always be privileged cunts like Hassan Piker who need to be mocked as mercilessly as you may, because they are privileged and in a bubble and never have come to terms with anything resembling reality, be it the good parts or the bad parts. Because mind you, people like Hassan not only are too privileged to ever come to terms with the actual bad parts of reality, but they often also have this very cartoonishly over the top villainous conception of reality where it's all, history was 90% oppression, blah. And that too is unrealistic in the way that that word is supposed to mean, in the sense that it is not true. There are bad parts of reality, but the bad parts of reality that actually exist have nothing to do with Hegelian gobbledygook or post-Hegelian gobbledygook of my oppression, my oppressor. Usually,
Yeah,
usually it's just life generally sucks in some ways. But that doesn't
yeah,
mean that the suckage is what defines reality either, on the other spectrum.
regarding the idea of a real man, this is something that I've been thinking about. It's that women say in order to be a real man, you need to be able to protect and provide, pay all the bills for your wife and family. And the thing is, men used to be able to do that relatively easily, but then women entered the workforce, which by flooding the workforce with literally half the population, depressed wages. But then there was a new social contract that was formed that said, yes, man, you're making less money, but since your wife is also working, you'll have more together than you would working by yourself. And then, that was a social
That didn't
contract for
work
a
because
while.
she kept all the money for her luxuries and didn't
Now, I
contribute to the
won't,
family in a lot of cases.
because I won't even say that, because in the first maybe like 10, 15 years, that was the social contract, and it, worked okay. And then the second wave of feminism came along and said that women aren't getting the highest positions, the highest salaries, the CEO position. So what we need is gender based affirmative action in order to advocate for women and get them into these top positions. So now women are getting more college positions, earning more money, and now they're looking at guys who have had literally all those opportunities taken away from them and saying, "Why aren't you up here with me?" And not
Well,
only
well,
do not only that
there's
fact, but also women have the distinct advantage of being able to make a lot of money strictly off their beauty, which men genuinely generally do not have.
well, and there's the other factor that kind of on paper always meant that this was doomed to fail, which is women are instinctively hypergamous on average. They want someone who is above them in terms of provisions and or status and or power. And as a result, the more women had an active role in the workforce and were making their own money, that was then their baseline to go husband hunting. I.e., if I don't find a man who is more status, more powerful, and more monetarily lucrative than me, then I don't want him. Because sadly enough, this goes back to the the fucked up transaction that so often happens in these sorts of relationships where women want men to be protectors, providers, appliances, in-house bodyguards, and all of the rest of it, but they don't actually like like men. Like they don't actually enjoy the person attached to the machinery doing all of those things. And if at any point men fail in all of those things and several others that I didn't even name, the six sixes and so on, then your man card gets revoked, and whoops, you are no longer a man. You are simply, as I claim, or as I coined a little while ago, a blank piece of human flesh at that point that happens to be male.
Yes, look, not all women are like that, but the women that are, they aren't looking for a husband. They are looking for a host on which they can, what's the term, parasitize.
They're looking for a person who serves the function of the knight in shining armor, the person uh, who serves the function of the body tripper, the person who serves the function of an in-house bodyguard and handyman, and a bank account slash prestige factory.
Yes, that is the word. Those women aren't looking for a husband. They're just looking to parasitize their men,
Well,
which means to infest or exploit as a parasite.
yeah, in enslave might even be a better word, as charged as that word is. Given how a man's entire personhood can evaporate into thin fucking air whenever he fails to do any of those things, and he is thrown away very similarly to how you would throw away an expensive appliance that failed to do its function. Um, I think enslaved is also a perfectly fine word to use in this context. And it would be immensely helpful if we could remember that the things that make you a man are not your utility, your status, your power, your um, toughness, your confidence, etc. What makes you a man, at least in a sane world where sane definitions were applicable, would be you are a male human who went through puberty and are as such just as valuable as a human as any other type of human would be, at least in theory. Just like with the whole real job thing, my standard for is it a real job is, are you making enough money to support yourself and or um, create a lifestyle for yourself? If yes, then as far as I'm concerned, that is a you pass go. That is an adequately real job. I don't append all this softcore nihilistic bullshit on top of it, where you must also be suffering and miserable 90% of your job, or it's not real, or you must be working for an institution, or it's not real, or it must be some well-established industry, or it's not real, etc., and so on. Like, as long as you're making enough money to support yourself and or your lifestyle, it is real in my opinion. Just like, as far as I'm concerned, real man minus the trademark would be, is this a male human who successfully managed to go through puberty? Yes, then he counts. But then again, I guess I'm somewhat idealistic in this sense, because apparently realism is defined as softcore nihilism now, for all intents and purposes.
I feel like one of the reasons that, well, at least one of the reasons why people object, people use the term "real women" in regards to saying like opposing like women or depictions of women who are um, striking or beautiful. It's because if they if they acknowledge that those women or those fictions of women are realistic, that would force them to confront their own inadequacies and their own need to improve. And it's simply easier to dismiss things as being unrealistic than to realize you could look similar to that if you put the desired effort in. But a lot of people who use the term, real women aren't willing to put the effort in.
Well, it's also again somewhat tied to this idea that realism itself, or being realistic, is synonymous with suffering and or the lowest common denominator and or softcore nihilism. Beauty is exceptional and fantastical, therefore it couldn't possibly fit into the realism box, according to these people.
Well, one
And
thing that a lot of people who are fit or do have like attractive bodies or like slim shapes usually do suffer a lot in the gym or in their diets.
well, yes, but that's neither here nor there. Um, and let us contrast, for example, the difference between the real man TM concept and the real woman TM concept. The real man TM concept is saddled with duties, utilities, functions, and responsibilities. The real woman TM concept is sort of defined by her failure to live up to a higher than a higher than mundane standard.
Yeah,
I.e.,
the real
a
the
real
real
man is a real man isn't a real man until he has the six sixes at least and several other vectors of prestige and utility on top of that. But a real woman isn't a real woman unless she doesn't fit some platonic ideal, apparently, according to
yeah
the people who use those terms.
yeah the real man is He-Man. The real woman is Amy Schumer.
Or Lizzo, depending on how far down you want to go. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Also, it's funny because very often, because both of these I think come from a very gynocentric, very feminine place, you will find the same people using the same definitions for both terms. I.e., correct me if I'm wrong. You've watched a lot more Fresh and Fit and stuff than I have, but are very often the women who use the real man box checklist the same women who poo poo the idea of the attractive supermodel esque or video game character esque woman, the one that would be defined as fan service if they were in video games or movies. Because it seems to me from what little exposure I have, and thank God I don't prefer women most of the time, but
Well,
but that
in order to
it's the very same entitled women who define real womanhood as doesn't live up to beauty standards, who are also expecting the larger than life beauty standards and or prestige standards and or hypergamy standards of men. The Amy Schumers
let's
want
see.
the Elon Musk and will not settle for anything less than a person with the mind and resources of Elon Musk and the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger or
Well,
something similar.
in regard to the girls that appear on Fresh and Fit, some of them are those Amy Schumer, Lizzo esque types, but a lot of them are superficially beautiful. Or let me put it this way: if beauty was food, these women would be empty calories.
Uh huh. But the funny thing is, society in general doesn't look down on the Lizzo types or the Amy Schumer types, even when they simultaneously will rail at you for using uh, any fan service worthy body types as your standard for female beauty, but will also rail at any man who doesn't fit the real man TM standards, i.e., even fat women will willingly say, "I don't want a fat man. I want a sixes man, a high value man," as female dating strategies would say.
And ironically, because of such standards, they will, in the end, to bring this back around, suffer
Yeah.
because because as has been pointed out literally by a bunch of different people, including Fresh and Fit themselves, there is literally not enough of those men to go around, and so usually only one woman, or maybe he'll have one main girl and one girl on the side, will be able to land that guy, and the rest will just be sitting there with their asses in the wind. And
Or
also
you'll
to
have the Giga Chad have a secret harem. And the weird thing is, quite a lot of women don't seem to be all that annoyed by the concept of being in a harem. Um, it almost feels like some of the time, at least in the modern world, that we might be returning to tournament models of mating, where one alpha male, one Giga Chad monkey will have an entire harem of females, and all of the quote unquote lesser males will be shit out of luck and or become beta orbiters to be friend zoned.
Mm. Yeah, speaking of such things, I actually have a quote from the Bible. It's Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. It says in the New International Version, "In that day, 7 women will take hold of one man and say, 'We will eat our own food and provide our own clothes. Only let us be called by your name. Take away our disgrace.'"
Yep. And was that by chance a description of an apocalyptic situation, or at least a precursor to some kind of divine wrath?
Possibly. I don't remember the entire excerpt.
Ah, well, it would certainly seem like, at least on some level, the scribes of the Bible may have known, maybe instinctively, maybe because divine inspiration, about the possibility of returning to tournament models. And even the people who normally and will willingly say return to Monkey, um, don't I don't think this is usually what they mean. They don't mean return to chimp or bonobo style tournament models. I could be wrong, but even most of the people I've heard say return to Monkey don't usually include mating strategies in their list of things we should return to Monkey with or for.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the women who usually say this are like the least, as you mentioned before, like, even the ones that are attractive are not beautiful. Because beauty, at the very least, in my opinion, has a sort of, you know, you know,
It shouldn't be
purity
just
and
skin deep.
it has a sort of purity and grace about it.
Yeah.
Like a sort of purity, grace, and elegance.
It's the Snow White standard, if you will. The reason why the Queen was considered less beautiful than Snow White was because um this isn't in the Disney version, but it's a version that I saw as a child that always stuck with me. The Magic Mirror saying, um, uh, "Your loveliness is fair, 'tis true, but there is one more fair than you. For Snow White's beauty does begin where yours does stop, 'tis from within." And that always struck with me for some reason. That was always at least implicitly the reason why the Queen was considered less beautiful than Snow White, was because, as beautiful as she was on the outside, she was, as everyone knows, the evil queen, whereas Snow was good to everyone she meets, including the huntsman who was told to kill her. So, like, that seems to be at least an implication of the Snow White story.
Yes, and it also seems to me that whatever you do, encounter something genuinely beautiful in life, you will have a sort of innate desire to protect it. Like,
Yes,
you will not want to see this beautiful thing disappear from the world.
one of the many reasons why I deeply despise how realism so often is poisoned with this whole softcore nihilism thing. Because once you treat nihilism, once you treat groundedness as though it is the norm to which everyone should be aspiring, what incentive is there then to preserve the quote unquote fantastical or unrealistic things that might be beautiful or extremely meritocratic?
But
And I don't want to see realism be so inseparable from nihilism that we actually are killing beautiful or wondrous abnormal things on the grounds purely that they are abnormal and or unrealistic.
All right, so let's wrap this up because, as I mentioned before, I'm not feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any final words?
Don't let them make you believe that realism is softcore nihilism, and don't let them convince you that the reality which we have features no inspiring or awe-inspiring things. It is neither true, nor helpful, nor valid, nor moral. Fuck that noise.
Yes, and I would just like to say that you know, do not feel pressured to live up to the standards of what a lot of modern women today will say, quote unquote, is a real man, because most of them are themselves so out of touch with reality, they have no idea what a real man even is. So
I
their
will,
standards should be of no concern to you.
yeah, I will add to that that the only person whose standards for real manhood that matters are your own. Seriously, do not let anyone else's standards convince you on simple, like, irritation or indignation grounds that you should be going through 1,000 hurdles. If you find yourself to be an adequate man, then chances are, on some level, you are an adequate man. And don't let anyone else tell you different.
Okay. I've been Mystery.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys.
Goodbye, everybody.